राइट साइड में खड़ी होंगी, लेफ्ट साइड में थोड़ी ना खड़ी होंगी। एक प्रेशर काम कर लो, एक प्रेशर काम करते हैं, एक एक हाँ श्योर, ठीक है। आप अपने नाम मार्क्स हाँ ये बनी हुई ना लाइन, इस लाइन के साथ
Our guests have arrived. Kindly maintain silence. Our guests have arrived. Ma'ams and sir, we're just starting. Just a minute or so. Our guests are here only. I request you all to be kindly seated. Kindly sit, please. We have a guest here. Honorable Srimati Smriti Subin Irani, Honorable Minister for Women and Child Development and Minority Affairs, Government of India, Honorable Mr. Justice S. Ravindra Bhatt, Honorable Chairperson, Juvenile Justice and Child Welfare Committee and Judge, Supreme Court of India, Honorable Ms. Justice B.V. Nagaratna, Honorable Judge, Supreme Court of India, Ms. Cynthia McCaffrey, Country Representative, UNICEF India, Honorable Judges of the Supreme Court and Supreme Court of Sri Lanka, Honorable Chairpersons of Juvenile Justice Committees and Honorable Judges of High Court, Chairperson and members of National and State Commissions for Protection of Child Rights, Secretaries and senior officials from Union and State Governments, Member Secretaries of National and State Legal Services Authorities, Chairpersons and faculty of National and State Judicial and Police Academies, Vice Chancellor and academicians from National Law University, senior police officers, registrars from the Honorable Supreme Court and High Courts, representatives from NIMHANS, members of District Judiciary, Juvenile Justice Boards and Child Welfare Committees, UNICEF team, senior advocates, advocates on record, members of bar, representatives from prosecution, police, civil society organizations and media, esteemed guests and participants. A very good morning to all present. I, On behalf of Honorable Juvenile Justice and Child Welfare Committee of the Supreme Court of India, take this privilege to warmly welcome all our esteemed guests to the inaugural session of 8th round of National Annual Stakeholders Consultation on Child Protection. After culmination of several enriching deliberations at the state level, we have today gathered here to embark on a 2-day journey to converge and contemplate on children in conflict with law, highlighting the significant aspect encompassing the prevention, rehabilitation, restorative practices, diversion, and alternatives to detention. It is said that plants have enough spirit to transform our vision. Plants symbolize growth and nurturing. To gift a plant is to give respect wrapped with wishes of prosperity and progress. With that thought, may I now request Ms. Vaidehi Subramani to present a potted plant to felicitate Honorable Minister Srimati SITI Zubin. May I request Ms. Tanvi to present a potted plant to Honorable Mr. Justice S. Ravindra Bhatt. I now request Shri Subhash Chandra Sharma to present a potted plant to Honorable Mrs. Justice B.V. Nagaratna. I now request Ms. Tinny Kapoor to present a potted plant to Ms. Cynthia McCaffrey. Thank you. Honorable Mrs. Justice B.V. Nagaratna, Judge, Supreme Court of India, has been pivotal in paving path for compassionate justicing. Honorable Ma'am is known for impactful verdicts wherein each decision portrays her empathy for the cause of social justice and removal of stigmatization. It is my honor and privilege to invite Honorable Mrs. Justice B.V. Nagaratna to deliver the opening remarks. Ma'am.
Namaskar and a very good morning to everybody. Honorable Minister for Women and Child Development, Government of India, Srimati Smriti Zubin Irani, Honorable Justice S. Ravindra Bhatt, Judge Supreme Court of India and Chairperson, Juvenile Justice Committee of the Supreme Court, my distinguished colleagues of the Supreme Court, Ms. Cynthia McCaffrey, Country Representative, UNICEF India, Honorable judges who are chairpersons and members of the Juvenile Justice Committee of various high courts, secretaries and officers from various ministries and departments of police, Government of India and state governments, representatives of the NCPCR and state commissions for protection of child rights, representatives of UNICEF in India, learned chairpersons and panelists, distinguished invitees, members of the NGOs, Secretary General and Registrars of the Supreme Court, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen. I welcome all dignitaries present here on behalf of the Juvenile Justice Committee of the Supreme Court of India. I particularly thank Honorable Minister for Women and Child Development, Government of India, Srimati Smriti Zubin Irani, for taking time off to grace the occasion. I welcome each one of you to this 2-day National Annual Stakeholders Consultation. The Nobel Prize-winning poet Gabriel Mistral has written, and I quote, "We are guilty of many errors and many faults, but our worst crime is abandoning the children, neglecting the fountain of life. Many of the things we need can wait, but the child cannot wait. Right now is the time. His bones are being formed. His blood is being made. His senses are being developed. To him we cannot answer tomorrow. His name is today. In that background, I wish to once again highlight that juvenile delinquents are not born criminal, but have succumbed as a result of being victims of neglect, parental or societal. The theme of this conference is Children in Conflict with Law, Prevention, Restorative Justice, Diversion, and Alternatives to Detention. In this regard, we need to envision a nation where all children are free from crime and violence, and where contact of children and youth with the justice system is rare, fair, and beneficial. This vision is rooted in the need for a juvenile justice system that supports the pro-social development of children and youth who come into contact with the system and thereby ensures the safety of communities. It is my earnest hope that the deliberations which are to take place over the next 2 days will address various socio, legal, and psychological aspects of juvenile delinquency. Some thoughts on how the criminal justice paradigm places children in general and juvenile delinquents in particular in a rather precarious position must be rekindled. Therefore, it is imperative to acknowledge that children in conflict with law are not just offenders, but in many cases are also children in need of care and protection. Very often, juvenile delinquents are themselves victims, particularly in instances of drug trade, sexual trafficking, or family disputes. In India, we have the Juvenile Justice Care and Protection of Children Act 2015, and to this enlightened audience, I need not go into the details of it, except highlighting Section 3 thereof, which takes into account almost every element of securing justice for children, and the 14 principles which are enunciated therein is of prime importance. However, it is undeniable that there is a mismatch which exists between the ideals in the Act and their implementation. This is especially so when institutions such as registered shelter homes are concerned. Such institutions, in the absence of standards, become fertile grounds for commission of grave acts of violence, such as what was witnessed in the Panvel shelter home in the case of State of Maharashtra versus Ramchandra Sambhaji, or the Muzaffarnagar shelter home case. The Supreme Court, in re exploitation of children in orphanages in the state of Tamil Nadu, has spoken through Justice Madan B. Lokur to recognize that the problems faced by introducing the concept of restorative justice is that a child in a care institution is recorded as a child in need of care or protection simply for statistical purposes, and no effort is made to introduce an individual child care plan. According to NCPR Audit of Shelter Homes 2020, which is the latest available, there are 7,163 registered children care institutions. This includes shelter homes, adoption agencies, observation homes, orphanages, special homes, etc. Of these, a whopping 6,299, or nearly 88%, are run by the NGOs or trusts, while the government runs only 864 centers, mainly observation homes, where juveniles in conflict with law are detained. This makes it increasingly important to ensure adherence of standards at an institutional level. The care, protection, treatment, development, and rehabilitation needs of children cannot be ensured by one institution without the support from other institutions or components in the system. The police is the prime and usually the first state agencies to come in contact with neglected and delinquent children. Its approach sets the course of the children's response to and trust in the other state instrumentalities. A penal reception by the police does not augur well for creation of a mutual relationship of faith and warmth between the children and the state missionary claiming to be working for their care and protection. At the same time, a relationship of trust created by the police may be destroyed if an equally sympathetic and understanding judiciary does not reinforce it. The most efficient and committed adjudicatory bodies cannot protect the best interest of the juveniles without adequate casework services and institutional and community care agencies. As the best interest of the juveniles cannot be secured without adequate community support structures, their integration in the juvenile justice operations becomes a precondition for success. Similarly, an exhaustive aftercare program can achieve little if the environment or training facilities in the institutions are not conducive for children's development and rehabilitation. Basic data relating to children in difficult conditions and evaluative research feedback on the existing services are the preconditions for a comprehensive policy and its evolution. Piecemeal and fragmented measures taken for the care and welfare of delinquent and neglected juveniles are bound to malfunction in the absence of a holistic approach to the problem of juvenile social maladjustments. Do the various measures taken in the realm of juvenile justice in India constitute a cohesive combination of interrelated, interdependent elements forming a collective entity? If not, what are the causes for this state of affairs? What are the ways for transforming a conglomeration of various juvenile justice organs into a juvenile justice system? Statistics today indicate that there is a strong correlation between deprivation of economic resources and juvenile delinquency. Children are born into unfortunate circumstances which push them into a life of crime and violence. It is therefore imperative that an approach which is focused on deprivation and poverty, I would also include marginalization, is necessary to address the problem of juvenile delinquency. I must say that in this regard, the Integrated Child Development Scheme, or the ICDS, a flagship scheme of the Government of India, provides targeted care to children in these core areas. The ICDS seeks to break the vicious circle of malnutrition, morbidity, reduced learning capacity, and mortality of children, but it is only up to 6 years. This approach, if modeled to address the basic needs of a child up to 18 years of age at least, can, in my view, also tackle juvenile delinquency by addressing the issue of depravity. If I could take a minute or two more, I would say that what is disturbing to note is that as per the Crime in India report published in 2020, about 85% of the apprehended juveniles lived with their parents, which clearly reflects an inherent failure of the family and community in nurturing the future generation. Further, 91% of these juveniles had received at least primary level education. Does this reflect the failure of the education system in inculcating value-based education or education for good citizenship? These statistics surely reflect the need for strong preventive measures in order to reduce the nature of these crimes. Being mindful of the dangerous trends of increasing aggression levels among children, our curriculum needs to heavily emphasize on the values of kindness, respect, and empathy. Moreover, community involvement needs to become a more crucial facet of our curriculum. The issue of justice and family is much discussed in the contemporary era, but we need to emphasize that relationship between the two is more important. In my view, justice for children must begin from within the most fundamental institution in a child's life, the family. Justice for children is not a concept that is limited to justice when a child is in contact or conflict with law. More often, children come in conflict with law where there are elements of neglect and discord in the family life. Justice for children begins at home, but unfortunately in many families, parents have no time to cater to their children's needs or even to talk to them or interact with them. It is important to have knowledge of how the child is spending free time and whether he or she is exposed to any risk or danger. Many children end up in juvenile justice system as delinquents before they have been able to get help. They end up getting help through the juvenile justice system as delinquents, and that is what is wrong. A child should not have to commit a crime to get the help and attention he or she needs. A child is a child, and every citizen owes a duty to the child, whether or not any social or familial relationship is established. Children found on the streets, on railway platforms, and other public places need to be attended to. When they are taken to shelter homes, their safety, dignity, and security must be ensured. When a plethora of rights are created for children, the duties are on the society and governmental and non-governmental organizations. Therefore, every adult citizen must take a pledge to help and assist children who are in need of care and protection or who are in conflict with law. On that note, I thank all institutions and individuals committed to this endeavor, and I appeal to all present here to demonstrate the highest degree of compassion, dedication, and foresight in this regard. Our mission as a community must be the protection and promotion of children and their rights in difficult circumstances, as also their empowerment. I thank you all for your kind attention. Namaskar.
Thank you, Honorable Ma'am. Access to justice is enshrined as both a fundamental right and the means to enforce human rights. The Juvenile Justice Act of 2015 also enshrines the principle of best interest of the child. To meet the mandate, the system at each stage is required to be designed to ensure that the child is better served, has a participative presence, and feels protected in the system. I strongly believe that the mistakes do not define the children who come in conflict with law. It's their talents and potential which need to be applauded. As is said, everyone deserves that second chance. We now have a screening of short video which illustrates that no one deserves the second chance more than these children. May I now request to kindly screen the video, please? Thank you.
सबसे ज़्यादा यादगार पल, मैंने ज़िंदगी में कभी मेडल नहीं मुझे मिला है। दौड़ में भाग लिया था, रिले रेस में और सिंगल दौड़ में, तो दोनों में फर्स्ट आया था, तो उसमें मेरे को मेडल मिला था। तो वो मेरे लिए यादगार पल है। और मैंने जो पेंटिंग वेंटिंग भी बनाई थी, तो उसमें भी मुझे पुरस्कार दिया गया था।
Everyone deserves a second chance. These children no less. If any, they deserve more. They deserve a second chance more than anyone else, because perhaps they have never really had a first chance. Children would come into conflict with law primarily for three reasons. One is when they come from neglected households where the parent is not able to devote time. Second could be abuse, when children have been abused, and that abusive behavior in turn fuels this kind of reaction of delinquency. And the third is that children tend to get into bad company, start becoming party to petty crime, and then graduate upwards.
যখন কোনো চাইল্ড ইন কনফ্লিক্ট উইথ লকে আমরা দেখি মিট করি, সে কিন্তু আসলে একটা চাইল্ড ইন নিড অফ কেয়ার অ্যান্ড প্রোটেকশন। সে সময় মতো যত্ন পায়নি, ভালোবাসা পায়নি এবং সে গাইডেন্স পায়নি, সেই জন্যই সে চাইল্ড ইন কনফ্লিক্ট উইথ ল হয়েছে।
The Indian Constitution has made special provisions which enable the state take special measures and enact special laws for the protection of children. So this is actually a very interesting concept because this has been located in the fundamental rights chapter. More than that, there is an obligation on the state also to create structures which enable the realization of those rights.
तो जो इंक्वायरी का जो पूरा प्रोसीजर है वो जुवेनाइल जस्टिस एक्ट में प्रिस्क्राइब किया हुआ है, उसके जो प्रोविजंस है उसके रिगार्डिंग हमको किस तरीके से उसका प्रोसीजर चलाना है वो हमको ट्रेनिंग में सिखाया जाता है। हम लोगों को ये सोचना है कि जहाँ तक हो सके उस पॉसिबल उसको सारे के सारे बेनिफिट्स दिया जा सके और फिर से उसको रिकॉन्स्टिट्यूट किया जा सके सोसाइटी के अंदर में।
So there has to be a large dose of rehabilitation and an attempt to reintegrate children within society.
যখনই বাচ্চারা এসছে আমাদের কাছে তাদের পরিস্থিতিটা ছিল যে তারা একদম একঘরে হয়ে গেছে, নয় তাদের একদম নিজেদের বেরোনোর ইচ্ছে নেই, আর নয়তো তাদের চারপাশে পাড়া প্রতিবেশী বা নিজের বাড়ির লোক মানে এতটাই এক কোণে করে দিয়েছে তাদের এই যে আমি জীবনে আবার কিছু করতে পারি বা আমার মধ্যে কোনো ভালোত্ব রয়েছে সেই বিষয়টা থাকে না।
उनका डेवलपमेंट किस तरह से किया जाए, उनका एक जो स्टिग्मा होता है, कुछ उनके मन में बहुत सारी बातें होती हैं। कुछ बच्चे एक्सीडेंटली आ जाते हैं कि कुछ केसेस ऐसे होते हैं जिसमें उनका इन्वॉल्वमेंट हो जाता है, तो उनको ये विश्वास दिलाना कि आप कर सकते हैं, ये हमारा काम है।
The philosophy of the penal statutes has been that children don't know the consequences of what they do. So even if they consciously do something, they don't realize the full consequences in the same manner as an adult does. And an attempt is to ensure that their education is continued, they are given some meaningful training, and whenever they come out of these systems, they are able to recover their life or rather start a new life.
ऑब्जर्वेशन होम में हम लोग मेक श्योर करते हैं कि उसका रिहेबिलिटेशन प्लान पूरा हम लोग कंसिडर करके उनको पूरा प्लान जहाँ पे ऑब्जर्वेशन उनके गार्डियंस होते हैं उनको भेज देते हैं। काउंसलिंग के दौरान हमको ये भी जानने को मिलता है कि एक्चुअली में ये जो बच्चा है उसका अभी हम लोग रीइंट्रोगेशन किस तरीके से कर पाते हैं।
सबसे ज़्यादा ज़रूरी होता है कि उनका कॉन्फिडेंस लेना, तो ख़ास तौर पर इन्होंने सर्कल एक्टिविटीज़ प्लान की थी जो जिसमें बच्चे अपनी भावनाओं को व्यक्त करते थे। सर्कल ऐसी चीज़ है जिसे मैं खुलकर बता सकती हूँ, सबको शेयर कर सकती हूँ। जब मैं सर्कल में बैठती हूँ एक तो सबसे अच्छे से बात करना सीखती हूँ मैं, और साइलेंट में रहना, सबसे अच्छे से बात करना, सबके बात को सुनना, धैर्य रखना। धीरे धीरे अपने गुस्सा को कंट्रोल की मैं, और अपने आप को मतलब कि गुस्से में कंट्रोल कर लेती हूँ। तो मेरे को बहुत पसंद है सर्कल। कुछ हम यहाँ पर ट्रेनिंग्स वगैरह भी प्रोवाइड कर रहे हैं कि बच्चे अगर लो इकोनॉमी क्लास से हैं तो वो निकल कर बाहर निकलें तो कुछ अपने दम पर करें, उनके मन में जो एक डार्कनेस रहती है वो उनके मन से निकल जाए और वो समाज की मुख्य धारा में आ जाए।
मुझ में ना बहुत सारी बदलाव आई है, मैंने यहाँ से बहुत सारी चीज़ें सीखी है, जो चीज़ मैं घर पे नहीं सीखा ना वहाँ किया, वो चीज़ यहाँ पे मैंने सीखा।
So prevention, restoration and reintegration, these are the three aspects. Now how do you achieve it? I think the first and very important aspect is the need for emphasis on training, capacity building and training. Whatever homes we might create, whatever posts we might create, unless we ensure that they are manned and manned with people who are competent, capable and sensitive to what is needed actually will never be achieved. It will remain a goal.
सबसे पहले ये देखते हैं कि जो बच्चा है, एक कोई भी इंसान है, उससे कोई अगर गलती हो गई हो तो उसको उसके गलती का एहसास भी करवाना है। ये भी देखना है कि उसको उस गलती की वजह से वो पूरा डिप्रेशन में ना चला जाए, या फिर से वो अगर नॉन क्रिमिनल के साथ आ गया तो बड़ा क्रिमिनल भी बन सकता है। तो हमको ये सेटिस्फेक्शन होता है सबसे ज़्यादा इस इंस्टीट्यूशन के अंदर कि हम लोग समाज में एक बच्चा जो है अगर गलत रास्ते पे चला गया है तो अभी भी उसके पास हमारे पास टाइम है कि उसको हम लोग रीकॉन्स्टिट्यूट कर पाएँ।
समाज को हम ये कहना चाहेंगे कि इन बच्चों को इस दृष्टि से ना देखें, क्योंकि ये भी बच्चे हैं और नादानी में गलती करे हुए हैं, कि अपराधी नहीं है ये बच्चे।
I think The ultimate aim is that they live with dignity and meaningful citizens of this great nation. That is what we should ensure that these children are, and enjoy the full range of those rights which all of us get, no less than that. Without that, I don't think we can grant them that justice which Constitution assures to every citizen.
This film indeed portrays the concerted efforts by all stakeholders which bring about a galvanic impact in the lives of children in conflict with law. UNICEF India has always been instrumental in lending its support in the journey of protection of child rights. Ms. Cynthia McCaffrey, country representative UNICEF India, has relentlessly devoted decades of her leadership and expertise in championing the cause of children and women. She joined UNICEF in 2001 and has been mobilizing support for UNICEF ever since. It's my honor to invite Ms. Cynthia McCaffrey to present her introductory remarks.
Ms. Irani, Honorable Minister of Women and Child Development and Minority Affairs, Justice Bhatt, Honorable Chairperson, Juvenile Justice, Child Welfare Committee, Supreme Court of India, Justice Nagaratna, Honorable Judge, Supreme Court of India, Mr. Turaraja, Honorable Justice, Supreme Court of Sri Lanka, members of the judiciary, government, law enforcement, commissions of child rights and civil society, and colleagues from across UNICEF, Namaskar. On behalf of UNICEF India, it is my honor to be here today. This truly distinguished gathering with the leadership of Justice Bhatt, Madam Irani, Justice Nagaratna, reiterates the highest regard with which India holds protection and the rights of every child. Protecting children and youth is a constant journey, one that all of us can continue to learn and can continue to do better. And India's actions demonstrate again and again its leadership and its courage for all of us to continue to build better platforms, better systems for protecting our children. India, as an early leader, was among the earliest ratifiers of the Convention on the Rights of the Child, and since ratifying that convention in 1992, has worked to translate that into action here in India, creating systems to protect the right to education, a child's right to health, a child's right to water and nutrition, ways to empower girls. India's comprehensive and ever-improving child protection architecture has stood for decades as a beacon for children, especially the most vulnerable. And it's created a common standard for dignity as serves as a catalyst for children to thrive and to grow in order to reach their greatest potential. Most importantly, building on its commitment to protecting its children, India has endeavored to establish a strong alternative system of justice for children, specifically for those children in conflict with the law. It ensures that the individual circumstances of children are considered. And Justice Nagaratna talked about the importance of law, but also looking at the humanity of people. India works to balance the rights of the individuals and the responsibilities of children and communities as well as victims. And the focus is on the best interest of the child. And that is driven by a belief that we've just seen, that children can reform when given care and protection. In this regard, I pause to truly recognize the vanguard of this effort, all of you, those who are the first responders, the police, the prosecutors, the judges, the social workers, the counselors, the child helpline functionaries, the department functionaries, all of these frontline workers who have a relentless commitment to ensure that children's rights are realized and they have a chance to seek their greatest potential. On behalf of UNICEF, I'd like to focus on a few key points. First, UNICEF's conviction
especially as we emerge from the historic G20 summit, to work with India to continue to put a spotlight on gender justice and the well-being of all children. India is and continues to be a global thought leader on child protection. India's cutting-edge child protection systems and a strong focus on prevention enable us to learn across India but across the world as well. The Juvenile Justice Act is progressive and marks a significant shift in the approach towards children in conflict with the law. It helps all of us strengthen and build on lessons and standards from around the world. India is leading on looking at how to use and implement the Convention on the Rights of the Child, but looking at how to apply things like the Beijing Rules and the Riyadh Guidelines. The second thing that UNICEF would like to focus on is putting equity at the heart of what we do. A recent UN global study has highlighted that children from vulnerable communities are overrepresented in detention and judicial proceedings. Globally, 1.5 million children are deprived of liberty per year. The majority of them are poor and boys. The third key focus area that UNICEF would like to highlight is, just as we've heard and seen in the film, focusing on the root causes. National Crime Records Bureau data suggests that about 34% of child offenders were those who have dropped out of school after upper primary level, and another 45% after matriculation. Further evidence shows that secondary education and life skills training can reduce an individual's risk of offending at a young age by up to 20 or 30%. What do these focus areas really mean for children and for our discussions coming forward in the next few days? First, protection is not a law enforcement challenge. It is a challenge that cuts across all sectors and that requires all sectors to be engaged. How do we work to get children in school, keep them in school, and make sure they're learning in school? I've seen the frontline Angawadi workers that India has invested in and seen how well they guide and protect children and their families in nutrition and in health, and then gently guide them to be ready to learn in school. I was so impressed meeting a head of school in Telangana who had those young primary school teachers. He had doubled the number of children coming to school. He had improved the retention of those students staying in school through primary school, and yet he was still not satisfied. He was speaking to the panchayats, to the parents about how that school could do more and do better. And that's the kind of thing that we need to do across all sectors. The second thing this means for us is strengthening the capacities of child welfare, social protection, education, and health systems with law enforcement and justice systems. Seeing how those converge together. Convergence is a word and action that I learned from the Minister of Women and Child Development early on, bringing these together to truly work together. I recently saw this in action in Madhya Pradesh, where I visited a police station, and the law enforcement and the police were working hand in hand with civil society to both identify children and families at risk before they were in trouble, as well as to work to make sure that children and women had a safe place to come and bring their problems and to provide services to them and guidance to them where they could go to address their issues. Child-friendly corners are coming up in police stations across India. And now they're also initiating practices of police personnel and social workers as first responders to ensure that children don't feel intimidated when they come into contact with the law. Child care institutions are also investing in infrastructure, including facilitating linkages to education, to vocational skills, life skills, to the restorative processes we just heard about, to help rehabilitation happen and take root. I have been heartened to see and to hear these stories, and UNICEF has the privilege to be learning alongside governments with these programs in states like Gujarat, Madhya Pradesh, UP, Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, and Maharashtra. The third thing that this means for all of us is a strong legal framework which encourages alternatives to detention and diversionary measures within child justice processes. Functionaries from the police, the judiciary, social worker cadre play a key role in helping to ensure that children are diverted from formal justice system and are able to access alternative care systems. We're seeing examples of children in conflict with the law being rehabilitated with their families through sponsorship schemes as an alternative to detention. Similarly, there are promising practices emerging from states across India on orders for children in conflict with the law for group counseling and community work. I hope as we gather today and speak and listen to each other that we're able to hear more about these and how we can adapt them to the different contexts in which we work. And as we do so, how important it is to keep a focus not just on that initial rehabilitation, but rigor of systems that enable that rehabilitation to be lasting for the future of that child and young person's life. Fourth is we need to monitor and gather information and capture those lessons so that the robust systems truly enable us to create mechanisms that merge with ongoing missions, like Mission Vatsalya. How do we see and capture the data and make sure that we're using all systems and systems talk to each other and work together? The final thing and point that I would make in terms of what this means for us and what we do for and with children is keep our eye on that last mile and making sure that those communities that are sometimes the hardest to see and therefore the hardest to reach are well within our sights, and that we consider that as we look at the systems of convergence to make sure that children, families, and communities have that positive impact and that positive reach early in life and throughout their lives. All of this is possible when we're able to take these programs and these advocacy messages and truly turn them into social movements that all of us know and understand, no matter where we come from. Again, a lesson that I've learned from the Honorable Minister Irani is that we see this work, and we've seen this happen when we want to make women and young girls' rights happen. It becomes a social movement. Then we all know, understand it, and we back it up. We've seen that with campaigns to educate and save the girl child. So we can do the same here to make sure that we spread it across our communities and make it that social movement that we all know, understand, and become a part of. With that, I just want to say thank you for all of you being here, for the perspective, the experience that you bring, and I look forward to hearing both the ideas that work and the ideas that may not have worked, that we can learn from and do better as we spread this across India, and as we learn this and take this around the world for other countries to also protect and achieve the rights of their children. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. We have amongst us a leader who is driven to take us not just where she wants us to be, but where we ought to be. With a passion for protection and nurturing of the future of India, her cause for minimizing secondary traumatization of the victims, and zero tolerance stand against crime against children, she has displayed her conviction for securing the rights of the children and need for their rehabilitation and reintegration. It's my honor and privilege to now invite Srimati SITI VISION Irani, Honorable Union Minister for Women and Child Development and Minority Affairs, for addressing this august gathering.
Honorable Chairperson, the JJ and Child Welfare Committee, Justice Ravindra Bhatt ji, Honorable Justice Nagaratna ji, Honorable Justices, my friend and colleague from the UNICEF, Cynthia, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. At the onset, let me congratulate and compliment the Honorable Justices for bestowing the much needed attention on children of our country, especially children who are in need of protection, children who are in need of being valued, and children who are in need of support. I would like to here highlight that though the annual stakeholders conference for me is not new, what may be new for many who attend today is how much we in the government take note of the concerns that are raised in meetings such as this to ensure that we provide new solutions with alacrity. I would now like to enunciate a few. Most of us know that the JJ Act as amended in 2021 came into effect from 22 along with the amended rules. Much has been done to ensure that as a policy, non-institutional care of children in family surroundings is prioritized over institutional care in CCI. But much of the care that we seek to give has to be financially and infrastructurally be provided for. And hence I can proudly share with you that when you look at the budget allocated by the government for child welfare, it increased from 60 crores as was given in the year 2009-10 to 1472 crores just as of last year. Today, me and my colleague in the audience, Joint Secretary Indira Mallu, can happily share with you that since 2014 to 2023, we in the Government of India through childcare institutions have managed to provide assistance to over 7 lakh children. We are also happy to share that while close to the construction home which was to be allocated for financially, costs for that has risen along with other ingredients, and I must say, I use the word ingredients with a lot of care, ingredients that go into funding non-institutional and institutional care. We also are mindful of the fact that not one department but the government as a whole needs to look at children in need of protection and in need of welfare. And that is why I can happily share with you that on the Pradhan Mantri Gati Shakti National Master Plan today, we have registered and tracked over 3,286 childcare institutions. To articulate how far we have come, again, if you look at the numbers from 2009-10 to as of last year, we used to fund close to 500 institutions in 2009-10. Today, our benefits reach over 3,000 CCIs in the country. Today, Childline, which was earlier functional only in 80 districts, is now functional in close to 560 districts. And we now, with the Ministry of Home Affairs, are ensuring that every district now has added capacity building for Childline. Justice Nagratna and I were just discussing how we worked in unison between the judiciary, the executive and the legislative to protect our children during the pandemic. I remember there was an international hue and cry that many children in our country have been orphaned and are in need of support because they are in distress. That's when not only did the government step up, but also the Honorable Supreme Court, where directions were given to people across the nation that if you find a child in need of support, that child should be immediately brought to authorities so that the state can provide comfort and care for such children. Today, I can share that over 45,000 children in CCIs were not only vaccinated but also supported, and due diligence and note was taken by the Honorable Supreme Court. The Prime Minister was insistent that those children who have been indeed orphaned need to come directly under the care of the Prime Minister's office. And the PM Cares for Children schemes was announced, wherein a child who is orphaned during COVID, such a child would be provided academic support, financial support, and support for their mental health along with medical health. 4,345 such children today are in the care of the Honorable Prime Minister's office, which speaks volumes about the empathy with which the government looks upon its future leaders. While we know that under the Nirbhaya Fund, close to 415 POCSO courts have exclusively been set up, The last I was in the stakeholders conference, there were many senior police officials who told me that on the ground, one of the greatest challenges they face is to take a POCSO victim to depose before the court. During such a transition, during such a voyage, the monies for protecting such a child was insufficient. And that is why, after listening to the grievances of officers in service, we in the ministry allocated specially 80 crore rupees for such not only police officers but also victims who seek the protection of the court. When I took office, there were many complaints about CCIs that were not effectively monitored and not registered. Today, if I look at the numbers, we have close to 5,534 CCIs that are effectively monitored under the Act and also have ensured that their registration is as per law. I am also grateful today that between our offices and that of the Office of the Honorable Chief Justice of India, we have looked for guidance on many an issue with regards to adoption of children. As you know, that the new rules allowed for adoption orders to be given by the DM. And since such time that the rules were amended, today close to 2,600 children have been adopted in only 1 year. That shows that when we people who are committed to the cause of children unite in purpose, much can be done for those in need of help. Today, I'm also happy to share that the government created a platform digitally to ensure that children who are missing, children who need to be restored back with their families, repatriated back, can all be reported on one system. Under Mission Vatsalya, a portal which is subsuming Track the Child, Khoya Paya, and taking special inputs from juvenile police units from across the country today, we can say that close to 4,46,000 children who were missing have been found, of which 3,97,530 children have been matched and brought back to their families. That apart, today in the audience we have a gentleman who has assisted the department in ensuring that for mental health intervention and support and advocacy, especially not only for children in need of protection, but also officers and professionals who are helping such children. Under the Project Samvad, close to 1,30,631 child protection functionaries, including health and mental health professionals, law officers, judicial officers, members of CWC, all such individuals have received adequate support under Mission Samvad. Apart from this, a special program for 23,000 law enforcement and judicial personnel support and training has been given. Much can be said about efforts that have been done thus far. But I've always believed that it's not what you look at that matters, it's what you see. And under the guidance of Justice Bhatt and Justice Nagaratna, what we saw as we sat there today, what we discussed, is that much is yet to percolate to the ground. While I congratulate all the stakeholders for their contributions thus far, I would like to say something which is a bit painful for me as an administrator. I have found that people profit from institutionalizing many children. And if profit becomes the core of our effort, then many children will not find a home that they truly deserve. Hence, many visions will be spoken of, deliberated and debated. But visions without action will just be reduced to a happy dream that many amongst us have dreamed for years before. I also know that under the watchful eye of the Honorable Justices, many will commit to act. But action without conviction again will stem from a matter of your position and not from your passion. And that is why I appeal to the empathetic individual amongst you. The individual that is driven not by position but by passion. That if you look at those children from that position of empathy and passion, if you look at them as the leaders of the future, surely we will find the solutions that we've been waiting for such children for a long time now. Churchill had once said, and I will add my words to it, that the empires of the future are the empires of the mind. But if you look at it from a child's perspective, the child will say the empires of the future are not only the empires of the mind, but also those who are mindful of their children. So I'm hoping that here, as we stand, especially as women legislators, proudly after the passage of the 33% reservation bill, I look forward to that young girl who is right now in need of care in some institution, who can be a leader of tomorrow, only if all of you step up. Thank you for your service and look forward to your future contribution.
Thank you, Honourable Ma'am. It is the stellar leadership and compassion of Honourable Mr. Justice S. Ravindra Bhatt behind the organisation of the National Consultation. Honourable Sir has authored several judgments which illustrate his erudite expertise on the subject, adjuvant with his humanitarian approach, especially for the most vulnerable. It is my honour and privilege to now invite Honourable Mr. Justice S. Ravindra Bhatt, Chairperson, Juvenile Justice and Child Welfare Committee, and Judge, Supreme Court of India, to deliver the keynote address.
Honorable Minister, Smriti Zubain Irani, Minister for Women and Child Development and Minority Affairs, my colleague Justice Nagratna from the Supreme Court, Mr. Tiruvaraja, Judge Supreme Court of Sri Lanka, Judges of the Supreme Court, my colleagues present, Judges of the High Court, retired Judges of the High Courts, Directors of Legal Services Authorities, Judicial Academies, academics, distinguished invitees, members of child-related institutions, support persons, ladies and gentlemen. I'm delighted to be here. Very good morning to all of you. And of course, I should not forget Ms. Cynthia McCaffrey. Delighted that all of you are present here. I thank you all for taking the time out and participating in this 2-day national annual stakeholders consultation on child protection. This is the 8th round under the aegis of the Juvenile Justice and Child Welfare Committee of the Supreme Court. The focus every year has been to identify an issue within the broader ambit of child protection and deliberate on ways to further strengthen the ongoing commitment and practice within the theme as a convergent and coordinated discussion at the state and national level. As you are aware, this year the consultations are focused on children in conflict with law, prevention, restorative justice, diversion, and alternatives to detention. I thank the State Juvenile Justice and Child Welfare Committees and state counterparts for having the state-level consultations, which preceded this national consultation, and for subsequently developing a state action plan for each state, addressing judicial or administrative interventions for the state to take in improving justice delivery systems for children. You have all contributed to deepening the understanding amongst stakeholders and practitioners regarding the context, the best practices, and challenges, and in doing so, you have ensured that we live up to the spirit and of the progressive legislations and policies in the country with regard to the children in conflict with law. Distinguished speakers have highlighted at this inaugural session that India has provisions for implementation of care, protection, and social integration of children who are in conflict with the law. Our common concern and commitment is towards all-round development and rehabilitation and reintegration, and this unites all our efforts in this special annual meeting. Similarly, Commissions for Protection of Child Rights Act, like other laws, is also a part of this ecosystem. It establishes oversight to ensure the rights of children in difficult circumstances, including children who interact with the system as survivors, witnesses, accused of an offense, or in need of care and protection. The underpinning belief of justice for children's initiatives is that children can and should be reformed, and therefore reformation must be the primary driver of all decisions taken for them. This is the core belief that pivots the practices of restorative practices, diversions, alternatives to detention, and child-friendly legal procedures, including fair trials and child-friendly procedures such as legal and other appropriate assistance. Mission Vatsalya, about which the Minister spoke, lays down implementation procedures and mechanisms, financing them through various central and state resources to be able to fulfill these commitments. This has enabled states to establish juvenile justice boards and child welfare committees in every district as statutory bodies which inquire into the situation of the child in conflict with the law and child in need of care and protection, and pass orders which lay primacy on the reformation, rehabilitation, and social integration of the child. States have also established special courts and child-friendly courts and empaneled legal aid lawyers under the directions of the National Legal Services Authority. District child protection units and state child protection societies have consistently, over the past decade, improved the scope and quality of their services as governance and coordination structures on child protection at district and state level. Yet, one aspect I wish to highlight at this stage, since all of you are together, that every institution, whether it is juvenile justice boards or child welfare committees or other such institutions, are running with below their strength, in the sense that most of them have a large number of vacancies, and these vacancies are actually very debilitating and they paralyze the system. Without the full strength of the child welfare committee or the appropriate available quorum, the committee is unable to function. And then unless we establish and come out with a common protocol, when make it binding upon all the states,
these institutions will become just paper tigers. They will be meaningless. If we are to provide for protection of children, for instance, the Minister